All of this begins with the fact that retailers are allowed to sell to whoever they want to. And when they have an in-demand item, as tends to be the case, they're going to want to exploit that for all it's worth. And retailers have found that at certain instances, they can string along consumers, get them to spend a lot more money to get the thing they want, whether that's directly, meaning just charging more for the same item, or saying, before you buy the watch you want, I want you to spend X number of dollars with me or buy these other things. That way it doesn't look like you're just trying to reach for an outright bribe. Retailers have to play this fine line when it comes to this manipulation. You know, I want to push someone far enough to extract money out of a consumer, but not so far as to totally alienate them. And that push and pull is sort of a delicate thing, and this is what can happen when it goes wrong.
Greetings and welcome to this week's aBlogtoWatch Weekly. Ariel, David, you're both here this week. How are you, gentlemen?
I'm in the midst of a lot of podcasting. I have to sometimes remember, like, what show am I doing? Am I being interviewed? Am I interviewing someone else? It's great. I mean, 2 years ago, really, or more than 2 years ago now, we sort of relaunched podcasting. Not a lot of the aBlogtoWatch team was sort of into it. It was sort of unclear where it was going to be. This was even before you and I started talking about this weekly thing. Yeah. And now I think that what I've been talking about, what you realize and validate is like the watch world loves podcasts. So it's great. And we're building something, an amazing body of work, especially with superlative. I think that it has like so much value even after the fact. Like in 5 years, if you heard this episode of aBlogtoWatch Weekly, like it could be fun, but I'm sure you're thinking like, oh, well, that's old news. But I really hope that a lot of the content we make, ends up being somewhat evergreen, that you can go back to it later and it'll still be interesting. So, but now we're in the building process. So it's a lot. It's great, but it's definitely a lot of work, as you know.
David, did that sound like Ariel was having a go at aBlogtoWatch Weekly?
No.
No. It's just we just have to keep doing this for the rest of our lives to stay relevant.
That's right. I seem to be saying that we were irrelevant and that everything. I think
you know what it is?
Think we need to go out.
We need the live audience. We need the live audience. All those sitcoms, all the comedians, all that stuff. They have the live audience, which sort of like eggs them on. Like, we don't have that same thing. The audience is later, but there's something about. I want to record maybe some podcasts with a group of people. That can be very interesting. I guess a lot of it is, I want to have conversations and not just we like, but also the audience likes, and people say they like the conversations, but I think you get such immediate feedback from people right there that it's difficult when you have to sort of guess without that as to how people are responding.
Or we can just say whatever we want and use pre-recorded laughter and clapping, like basically just.
You're right. What if there was an AI laugh track that was still hard to please, like you still had to be funny?
That's depressing.
Well, I think it's time for me to go on superlative and say it's old, dull, boring, and it's been going on for too long, and that everyone should be listening to aBlogtoWatch
Oh my
Weekly.
God. What I'm saying is that a news show has the immediacy. People want to know right now. And that's the value because it's the latest stuff. Superlative is an interview show. There's very little reason for any one of the shows to listen to right now. Like, oh wow, I got to hear that, or it's gonna be old news. Like 5 years from now, the conversation in many instances is still relevant. So It's not about the desirability. It's just about the long tail nature of the media. I mean, I'm reading The Economist every single day. I think it's great. I'm not like, what is this old news? But like 5 years from now, the same article is not going to have the same value to me, right?
Yeah. Well, it's a great chat to begin with, Ariel. As soon as just before we started recording, we discussed doing a wee section going back in time to look at an old article on aBlogtoWatch Weekly. So there we go. Anyway, we might get onto that later on, but there is plenty else going on. But first of all, David, how are you? You've been busy building watches while Ariel's been talking about them.
Yes, I actually built a watch. And I'm happy to tell you about it. It's through Initium or Initium, and however you want to pronounce it. It's a small little company in Switzerland, and basically what you do is you go on their website initium.ch, and you can configure your own watch, and you can choose the movement style. It can be skeletonized, it can be like a full movement. Yeah, all kinds of different dial versions: solid, open work, classical, sporty, whatever else. The hand color, the strap color. Case style, and then they send it to you in pieces. The movement is assembled, but the rest is not, and you have to put it all together on your own. And they sell you the toolkit that you can use and they have these instruction videos on the website, and it's just such a cool experience. I recorded the whole thing, and I look forward to writing about it and finishing the review for aBlogtoWatch. So that was a lot of fun.
Great stuff. And are you wearing it?
Not at the moment, no. I don't wear a watch around the house.
You don't wear a watch around the house? What, you have all your watches sitting at the front door ready to go out?
Yes, but I don't wear them. The first thing I get home, I take them off.
That's a bit weird. Ariel, do you take your watch off as soon as you go home?
Oh, I'm wearing a watch right now.
Yeah. Do you? So, David, you obviously don't sleep with a watch on. Ariel, do you sleep with a watch on?
No, it'll like poke me, and I'll like wake up with this weird indent in my. It's bad. It's bad. You want to keep the sharp things away at night.
I sleep with 2 watches on. I sleep with an Apple Watch and whatever watch I have to wear that day on.
They must be darn soft. Okay, is all I gotta say.
Like I'm wearing a Christopher Ward 12. It's soft and smooth and supple on the wrist.
Nice.
I'm wearing a four-sided ninja star in my wrist. Okay,
That's great. I was just going to say it's so nice when someone smacks you in the head with like a 600-meter diver in the middle of the night.
David suffering from roll together. I think that's actually the first ever wrist check we've done on the show. 76 episodes, the first time we've ever talked about what we're wearing, which is just as well because it turns out David's never wearing a watch when we record because we're yet to record outside.
The funny thing is I have a watch next to me on the table whenever I work or whatever else. I have it here next to me, but not on my hand, not on my wrist.
I think that shows lack.
I think
lack
David
of commitment.
puts his watch on when he puts his shoes on. I think that's his ritual.
Yes.
Oh, you're not.
Exactly.
You're not a take your shoes off at the door person, are you?
Out the door? What do you mean?
No, as in like you're not one of these people that insist that anyone that comes into their house takes their shoes off and wanders around the house in their socks.
I mean, I don't wear a shoe.
That's a big split among people.
Really, like wearing a shoe indoors, that's weird. I mean, if I had a farm, I wouldn't be like taking it off all the time because I would be going outdoors all the time. But since I'm home and there's nothing outside to do, then I don't wear a shoe around the house because it's like, you know.
You know what? All right, David.
Okay, wait.
There's not enough reasons to divide people. We found a new division. Do you wear the shoes in the house or not? We're tearing the community apart at this point. People are going to find one camp to go on.
I apologise in advance to the listenership, but we are about to get severely distracted from talking about watches. Okay, so let me get this clear. David, go in, when you arrive home, you take off your watch and your shoes and wander around watchless and in your socks.
Yes, at best.
Okay, I thought I knew you. I thought I knew you.
You think you know a guy.
Yeah, it's funny that people have this mental image of me wearing shoes around the house. That's hilarious. It's like,
I can promise you that no one has ever had a mental image of you wandering around the house in anything but shoes if they've ever had a mental image of you at all.
That's hilarious.
Meanwhile, at the opposite end of the spectrum, I'm wearing 2 watches wandering around the house in my wellies. Ariel, you somewhere in the middle, clearly. Do you have a set of slippers at the door?
Yeah, I'm definitely in the middle. I am wearing house sandal shoes, whatever you want to call them, and a watch. I feel like I'm betraying my hobby if I don't wear a watch all the time. Like, Ariel Adams is not wearing a watch when he could be wearing a watch.
Scandal.
How dare he? I have to represent the hobby a little bit. It's not for me. It's a sacrifice I have to make for this collective love we have.
Dave is clearly a sheep in wolf's clothing or a wolf in sheep's clothing, whichever way around it is. Pretending.
Yeah.
David, what are you really into? Because it's clearly not watches.
I like watches, I guess.
Just a little.
10 years into it. Oh my goodness.
He's into those special shoe racks you put next to the door. He's really into those.
Oh yeah.
Please tell me you're not one of these people that's always like, okay, well, we're about to break me, let alone break the internet. You don't have keys fastened to your belt loop, do you?
No, but the entire home is basically destroyed and in shambles. But I have the most fantastic shoe racks that you've ever seen. It's like I just sit there on a little stool and just appreciate my shoe racks and the shoes on them, obviously.
Your keys shouldn't be also a bell, okay? They shouldn't announce that you're coming and going.
Ding, 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 ding.
I will confess that I have more shoes than my wife, but there you go. Anyway, there we have it. That's a little insight into the world of the three of us that you are completely not asking for. However, what we do have to do, because a movie has been watched that does have watch content, is do a blog to watch watches. Ariel, you've been to see the latest Indiana Jones. Give us a star rating out of 5 for the film and a star rating out of 5 for the watch content of the film. Which was better, the watch content or the film?
Wow, well, this was not only a movie that had like a watch placement in it, but this was a watch lovers movie in a lot of ways. And there's an article where I talk about this. It hasn't been published yet, but in a couple days' time, I'm sure it's going to come out. I mean, from the name of the movie, Dial of Destiny, to the fact that they talk about the sort of star is this device called the Antikythera, which is a real device, which is clockwork and about telling time. The movie sort of has a time travel-ish element to it. And then there's like watch scenes constantly where there's something with a watch in it, and it's totally nuts. I don't want to give spoilers for people, but like it's just fun to see all the watch spotting and the plot, how they put it in there. My favorite one is, most of the movie is sort of like, oh, I remember it in this other movie, kind of. And there's this scene where, in Indiana Jones, they're opening up the casket. There's the tomb of the, very old, body corpse. And one of them, the old corpse, which is supposed to be like 2,000 years old, has like a wristwatch. And they're like, what's going on here? And they just, I mean, to put that in an Indiana Jones movie where it almost looked like a mistake. Like, wait a minute, that skeleton shouldn't be having a watch. Like, that was part of the plot. They didn't even explain it. They barely explain it. And that's why I can't give this movie full marks on sort of the movie itself, because even though it's amazing to watch, from a plot perspective, there's a couple of things you're like, wait a minute. I mean, and that's even with suspending a lot of belief, but it is a good romp. It is fun. And again, if you are a watch person, you'll not only feel like this well represents the watch world, but is made by people who maybe think like you a little bit, and wanted watches to be a big part of it. So again, if you're a watch lover, you probably have to see it. Very good time. I went as a guest of Hamilton to the official opening in LA, which was a much more special experience. They had John Williams there performing some of the score. A lot of the people there came in costume. It was very odd because it felt like I was in an amalgamation of all the movies because there's a lot of very good costumes. So it was very, very exciting. But I thought it was pretty well done. I'm sure the reviews are going to be mixed. It's not like the first time we all saw, any of the first 3 movies, but it beats the Crystal one, the last one that came out, by a long shot.
A lot of it was filmed in Glasgow. So all of the scenes in it, which is, I believe there's a whole load of moon scenes with the parade with Neil Armstrong, is that right? Yeah, that was a big part of it. And in Sicily, so I actually traveled in Sicily to some of the places that were in the movie, even though, wow, did the movie screw up the geography of Sicily in the weirdest way. Well, I think so. I mean, Glasgow was shut down for about 3 weeks while they changed all the storefronts in Glasgow to be American hot dog diners and all this kind of bobbins.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I went to see some of that being filmed. So
and they just left it that way.
Yeah, just left it that way. It would have been better than the returning it to the way it is, but they would have it.
I'll bet.
So you give the movies worth a watch?
Look, I mean, if you're listening to the show, chances are you care about watches and you are of a certain age where you've seen most of them. You basically have to, right?
Yeah. No, you got to go and see it. Even if it turns out to be rubbish. Somebody's getting sued. And the company that's getting sued, according to WatchPro, is a company you're familiar with because I believe it's local to where you used to be, a company called Shreve & Co. This is a Patek Philippe authorised dealer being sued for $500,000 after a customer claims he was duped. Now, we did have to explain what duped meant to David, as it's not a word he was familiar with, which we forgive him for, but this just appears to be a bit weird. Rich bloke sues other lots of rich blokes for not being able to buy the richest of rich bloke things.
I'm not surprised by this. This case was only a matter of time, right. And it was Shreve and that it was this particular plaintiff is really kind of coincidental. Mm-hmm. This is a practice which has been happening too much for a number of years, and I really think that this guy was pissed off and was like, you know what, I want to prove a point. I want to call them out on their BS. And I'm kind of happy that this happened because it's very infrequent that a lot of this funny business, if you will, behind the scenes ever makes it to sort of court. I love it when it does because honestly, in a lot of ways, justice tends to prevail. Whereas before, it was just sort of a bunch of, low risk communities, i.e. wealthy people, fighting amongst one another.
Yeah, so the basic story is man wants to buy Patek 5980, which is gold Patek, and is told, or believes he's been told, or alleges that the only way to get on the list to get one was to buy lots of other Patek goodies from this particular dealer. Obviously then didn't show up, so he's suing in some way, shape or form to say, well, you made me a promise that if I did X, you would provide Y. You didn't provide Y, so I'm suing you about it. Do we think that this will change anything? The fact that somebody dares to actually raise a case against a store will put the frighteners on other people hinting or tipping the hat to the old, yes, if you buy 33 of these Datejust, we might just let you buy the Submariner at some point in the future.
So all of this begins with the fact that retailers are allowed to sell to whoever they want to. And when they have an in-demand item, as tends to be the case, they're going to want to exploit that for all it's worth. And retailers have found that at certain instances, they can string along consumers, get them to spend a lot more money to get the thing they want, whether that's directly, meaning just charging more for the same item, or saying, before you buy the watch you want, I want you to spend X number of dollars with me or buy these other things. That way it doesn't look like you're just trying to reach for an outright bribe. But in essence, you are trying to bribe the retailer into selling you something, and that's very frustrating as a consumer. There's a lot of legal issues with that. And it also happens to be more or less against the rules with that retailer's relationship with the brand. Mm-hmm. I don't think that this was a consumer who was not sophisticated. I actually think I may know who this person is. And I believe that they've done this before. And they were probably trying to prove a point. Mm-hmm. I think that they were probably happy to do it so long as they felt that it would get them an in. But again, retailers have to play this fine line when it comes to this manipulation. I want to push someone far enough to extract money out of a consumer, but not so far as to totally alienate them. And that push and pull is sort of a delicate thing. And this is what can happen when it goes wrong. Lawsuits are not infrequent. What I think is important here is that he's making sure that Patek Philippe gets slung in it. And I'm sure Patek is not happy about this at all, because even though Patek, probably had very little to do with this in any way, shape, or form, now their name is being dragged through it, and they hate this type of publicity. On the one hand, it is good for them because it's like, yep, our watches are really hard to get. Look at all the crazy things people are willing to do to get them. So it actually kind of reinforces something that Patek Philippe likes, but they don't like being accused of fraud, trickery, or things like that. That is definitely something that doesn't coincide well with them. So I really don't know how this is going to pan out. Obviously, the person that did the lawsuit feels that there's a claim here. It's clearly not about money. This person has enough money. So I think he just wants it to be shown that companies do this. Hopefully there'll be a stop. But this is one of those very strange legal areas that I'm not really sure. It's not a matter of how it's going to pan out legally, but how it's going to translate into changes in the watch industry, I really don't know. But this practice isn't going away. No outcome of this case will make that practice, flat out not allowed. If there's a will, there will be a way.
So I just wanted to add that the WatchPro states that the case is complicated by the fact that Shreve & Co. is among the authorized dealers that have lost the agency of the watchmaker this year, so was ultimately unable to sell the watch to the customer, even if it had wanted to. But it's still, according to this customer, Shreve was still trying to push him into making further purchases, even if it had probably already known that it would not be able to deliver the watch eventually. So they are no longer a Patek dealer, is the point.
So, well, keep an eye on WatchPro and no doubt the watch media for how this does shake out. Whether it's a shakedown or not remains to be seen. Okay, David, on a scale of 1 to 100, how hot would you rate Ariel Adams?
Oh, definitely a number one, easy.
Definitely the hottest. Is he a hottie?
Wow.
Well, I mean, it also depends on what are the factors you're talking about. So what was this list exactly, and who did this?
So this is Rob Corder's list. So how hot do you think Rob thinks Ariel is?
I think
I have a feeling I'm not getting on the list next year.
So, I mean, we need to give you, we do, to be fair, we just need to roast you just a little bit over this, but mainly because I want to know the story of the photograph, because the photograph that got included in the Hot 100 list from WatchPro, yours is the best photograph, the most, obviously slightly, most unstaged, staged, if that makes sense. Everyone else has got their headshots and is looking as glamorama as possible. Your son has clearly photobombed the shot and you've gone with it, and it's really good. So check it out on WatchPro. But give us a story of the photo.
I mean, you more or less summed it up. My son bombed it. The publication, there was like a side publication, that WatchPro kind of put together, which was this Hot 100 thing. It's very nice of them, and they did a good little event in Las Vegas to debut this publication. It was again a really nice thing that they're doing, and I think WatchPro is doing a lot of great stuff in the U.S. They're going to be bringing awards here. I mean, there's no really business-to-business publication for the watch industry in the United States. aBlogtoWatch isn't really trying to be it. We're a business-to-consumer one, but we talk to the business as well, so I like that. But anyways, they hired a photographer, actually two gentlemen, who were fantastic and who came over, and we had a nice shoot, and they took a bunch of shots, and in the middle, my son just decided to come in. So there was like, a small number of shots with him and I, and then the rest were just me, and that's what they chose to go with, which was news to me. I did not know before it came out.
It's very good. It's very good. So go and read
it's
that.
a good one.
Also, just in case, because Ariel's obviously promoted out of Superlative, but I have actually done an episode of Superlative where I interviewed Ariel. So if you want to hear a bit of the backstory of how Ariel ended up being such a hottie, then go and listen to that episode.
Yeah, it was a good show. Hi, I'm Ariel Adams, founder of aBlogtoWatch, with a message from eBay, a platform I probably use daily. Make sure your watches are the real deal with eBay Authenticity Guarantee. I believe it's the first and best service of its kind that protects your luxury purchases and checks each watch individually at eBay's highly reputable authentication partner, Stolen Company, in the United States. From band to bezel, their authenticators ensure each wristwatch matches the eBay listing and is the real deal. Authenticity Guarantee is also very fast. Once authentication is complete, your watch is securely delivered via rapid 2-day shipping. Surprisingly, eBay's Authenticity Guarantee service is free for all watches priced $2,000 and up. No one should buy a luxury item without an Authenticity Guarantee. Do what I do and check eBay before each watch purchase, because everyone deserves real.
Some other news, a bit developing, and also kind of Superlative related, which is you had interviewed Guillaume from Argon, Vulcain, Nevada Grenchen not so long ago. Yep. And Argon have released their watch on Kickstarter, but it has had to be pulled or temporarily paused from Kickstarter for some reason. There appears to have been an IP claim, we think, against the name Argon, as opposed to being against any of the design. Again, as we spoke about last week, it's quite difficult to do anything which, stops somebody producing something that's just a design within the world of watches. First of all, tell us a little bit about your interview with Guillaume, and did you speak about this Argon watch?
Yeah, we definitely spoke about this. I was interested in Guillaume's history with Kickstarter because he's one of those people who's had a lot of success with watch projects on Kickstarter. Several of them were big. He had a brand that he started on there, and several others. They did not need to take Argon to Kickstarter. Mm-hmm. He specifically did this for sort of marketing strategy purposes, which is one way of saying this isn't going to stop the watches from being made or shipped. Yeah. So there's that. And this is a risk. I mean, these days we're seeing a lot more lawsuits happening in the watch space, which means really only one thing, and that is there's an awareness that there's some big money being made here or there. Not everyone, of course, is a recipient of big money. In fact, most aren't. But there are people who can get windfalls, and where there are windfalls, there are people with legal claims against them potentially. So I think we're going to be seeing more, not less, of potential legal claims related to all types of different things when there appears to be big money. And of course, that's mainly going to focus around the big brands. But yes, once in a while, there'll be something small like this. As you said, I know very little about the actual focus of the claim. You were saying that you thought it had something to do with the name of the brand, which is entirely possible. People come out of the woodwork and say, but that is my brand name. You can't do that. And they would probably come to some agreement and how to figure something out. I mean, usually the claimants, they want money. And if they're able to resolve something, then everything will proceed as planned.
So if you go to the Kickstarter page now, it currently says Argon Watches is the subject of an intellectual property dispute and is currently unavailable. I think, and I stress this with all the reservations I'm aware of, that it may be a dispute with Aragon Watches, who only differ by the inclusion of an A from being different from Argon Watches. And my guess is there's a whole kind of, you could confuse X for Y, etc., etc. So that is what I am hearing.
You're hearing that from who? Is there any evidence of this?
There is some chatter on the interwebs that this might be what's happening. That it's come from a watch brand whose name
I will
is
say
similar.
this. I will say this. If the person that shut it down was somebody at Kickstarter, my suspicion is that they would not do so for a similar sounding name. This is either you copied our name or you copied what our product looks like. It's one of the two. So we know that this is styled after the Deb and Toon Dream Machine. That is something where if Deb and Toon, again, I don't know what the relationship with Deb and Toon is or if they care. If anything, that might make the Dream Machine more valuable, to be honest. But, a Deb and Toon is owned now by American interests, and Americans tend to be more litigious than Europeans. So it's entirely possible they're like, yeah, if you want to use this design, you're going to give us some type of royalty or something like that. And that may be the discussions they're having right now. I don't think the claimant wants this to completely stop, but is using this as leverage to say, you need to kick us back something or have a deal with us before we proceed. Because again, maybe I'm wrong, but most of the time, if it's a Kickstarter thing, it would have to be a very clear, someone at Kickstarter could look at their product and look at this one and be like, wow, those are so similar. Yeah, I don't want to proceed here until these parties figure it out.
Cool. Well, keep an eye on what is happening with that. I'm sure it'll resolve itself, but it'll take whatever time it takes. Dubai Watch Week 2023 has announced its participating brands. We have interviewed folk from Dubai Watch Week in the past. Ariel, have you been paying attention to the brands that are going to be there this year? Anything stand out?
I mean, it's a really good mixture between some of the great independents and, some of the big names. Rolex and Tudor are going to be there, Chopard, Audemars Piguet. And then you have just a lot of the independents, and it's the independents themselves, the owners and proprietors. They're there with the watches. They're close to 50 brands, I think, already.
55, yeah.
I know that, I think that they wanted to only grow a little bit. There's a very limited amount of actual physical space, and no one at Dubai Watch Week wants it to be overly crowded. It's supposed to be, a nice time of being there a lot. I know that this year, I don't know if I can say too much, but there's a brand doing a launch, I think right before Dubai Watch Week or right after, which is something that I'm going to be, attending as well. So we'll see how that fits into it, because there are no really fancy launches there. It's very sort of quiet and subdued. But I think that the Siddiquis are very happy with the sort of volume and format and want to make it more interesting, but I don't see a huge desire to really grow.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes, speaking to Hind earlier on, we did an interview. She was speaking about how I think there's now 7 organizations will be in the kind of external pavilion with their own big booths, but I believe there is one brand that is doing something a bit special. I don't know who it is, So you do. So I'm just guessing from looking at the list. My guess is it might be Breitling, but that is purely a guess. Have Breitling been there before? Were they there last time?
I don't think so.
So that's my guess, because I don't think Breitling have one of the big external booths, and I can't imagine Breitling just sitting in a little stand that's exactly the same as everybody else's within the kind of, you know, normal area. So we'll see who it is that does that. Some interesting brands turning up. I mean, you scroll down this list and it's looking more and more like Watches and Wonders than ever before, but is clearly a much more relaxed kind of way of engaging with these brands. So yeah, see how that all washes out. Great stuff. Right, let's talk about some watches. We'll speak about a watch and a story at the same time. So Roger Dubuis Excalibur Spider Lamborghini Countach watch reviewed by Ariel. Also, Roger Dubuis CEO steps down with immediate effect. Ariel, is this watch and the CEO stepping down with immediate effect, are either of those two things linked?
They might be. They might be. I don't have any specific information about that, you know, but who knows what happens with the Lamborghini relationship and if that went positive or negative. This was a very expensive watch that, with the material, had, you know, some production issues and things like that because it was sort of a new material. I don't really know. I do know that it has been very difficult for you to be a CEO at a Richemont brand and sort of follow the market in a very agile way while also making that a kosher experience with the Richemont board, right? They take a lot of time and convincing, and they're slow to act, and they're quite punishing with failure. And to be a dynamic CEO that has to respond to market conditions requires a lot more autonomy. And it can be quite frustrating to be a bit of a maverick and want to try new things, or just actually, manage, while also having to make sure that a whole assortment of people are on board with your decision making. So I'm sure we'll get more news here and there about it. But Roger Dubuis has also been one of the more notoriously difficult Richemont brands. Even within Richemont, it's considered quite small and boutique. A lot of what Roger Dubuis does is used as production for some of the other brands. So they have this, amazing facility in Geneva, and they, they do stuff for other sister brands, assembly and things like that. So, Richemont does a good job of making sure that everyone has a purpose, especially from an industrial standpoint. From a brand perspective, this is a brand that is hyper-focused on very, very high-end, small production, very, very sort of futuristic, which is fine, but it is about as niche as you can get, and a very, very far cry from the Roger Dubuis of the pre-Richemont era, such as in the 1990s. I mean, it couldn't be further from what that Roger Dubuis was back then.
So Emmanuel Perrin replaces Nicola Andretta for a bit from what he's doing elsewhere. Nicola Andretta was previously at LVMH. Do we think he's on gardening leave, or do we think he's going to pop up back at LVMH, seeing as LVMH are really pushing forwards with their watch stuff?
He's a tenacious fellow. He's got some good ideas. I really don't think that failure at Richemont is a bad thing. I mean, George Kern is a very famous person who, had a very high position there and just said, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to, make a few more of my own decisions. And I'd say he's a success story. I think there's a lot of fantastic things people learn at Richemont, but Richemont is a bit of a victim of its own model, whereas the brands aren't necessarily free enough to do what it is they need to do, always to get by. So I think that, David and I, and I'm sure you, Rick, have a lot of inherent respect for Roger Dubuis. We like what they do. That doesn't mean we can stand by every single product, but I've always sort of wanted the best for that brand. I always sort of like them. It's one that I want to see be the best version of itself possible. So I do wish them very well.
Yeah, I mean, they turned up to Watches and Wonders effectively with no watches, because they had one watch, and even it was a concept watch. David, thoughts on Roger Dubuis, on this Lamborghini watch and the brand in general? You a fan?
I wrote an article about the Knights of the Round Table. A couple of weeks ago, we published that. That was a lot of fun to write, and it only happened like a week or so after we published that the CEO resigned. Which is another article. But anyway, I like Roger Dubuis very much in some ways, and in some others, I feel like I'm just not sure where to put them. They've been giving off these Bitcoin millionaire vibes. You know, it's like, oh, if you made a bunch of money real fast, then you go and buy yourself a Lamborghini and the Roger Dubuis to go with it, and that's it. That's where it starts and that's where it ends, which is a shame because obviously, you know, their movement designs can be really out there, and they add to the entertainment factor of watches and watchmaking. And I feel like, you know, it's basically a halo product for the world of watches. And the 2000s and even the 2010s, you know, you used to have many more concept watches and crazy movements and crazy dials and complications and all the rest of them, which we no longer see, hardly any. And so for that reason, you know, I like Roger Dubuis. We've been to the manufacturer, I don't know, like almost 7-8 years ago, something like that. And I mean, it's a funky brand. I just wish that they had more direction, and I wish that they activated a little bit more, and we could see stuff from them more often. And yeah, that's about it.
Good. Well, that was a watch related to Lamborghini. David, you have done a review of an MB&F HM8 Mark II, which is also car inspired. I'm not sure what to make of this. I'm not sure I like it. It just, I don't know whether it strikes me as quite a difficult watch to photograph. Like everything's really flat in terms of the case, not flat in terms of shape, but in terms of color. It feels, I mean, dare I say, it feels like Christmas crackery. Just weird looking at it. It doesn't look like it's got the kind of heft that I would normally associate with an MB&F. Like, they look substantial. This looks a bit odd. Is it really very different?
It's cool. I mean, it's a funky watch. It's not the horological machine that I personally would go for, but it's still a cool design. You can see that, you know, there are many cool details that you would discover only later on, and you can reverse engineer what Max was inspired by in terms of automotive inspirations and all the rest of it. It's a tad expensive for what it is. You know, again, I think the HM collection and the Legacy Machine collection, for that matter, is so strong, and there are so many truly breathtaking offerings in there that I'm just not sure this is the one that I would go for. But it's a funky watch.
And the material is carbon macrolon. Is this just another name for whatever moon swatches are made of?
Probably not. I think it's a little bit more delicate than that, and the color saturations and the way that they could work with these, and it's also extremely light. Was kind of cool, but again, it's what they do with it is, in my experience, what matters. So material sciences are very cool, and of course, you know, the world of watchmaking has been you know, using cool new materials, you know, actually pretty frequently over the last number of years. But still, if it's an ugly shape, or if it's like something that you would not want to wear on your wrist, then the whole thing does not matter. Here it's not the case. I think here they managed to replicate some of the car design elements very faithfully with this material, and to me that is what matters.
Cool. And it's got a Velcro strap on it, which feels a bit like what we call over here all fur coat and nae knickers. I don't know if that phrase rings any bells with anybody in either the States or Hungary, but it's like when you something really nice and then you attach something incredibly cheap and utilitarian.
It's because it's so cold where you live. You assume everything valuable has to be very heavy to protect you from the elements, right?
But the problem with Velcro straps is they only really work if your wrist happens to be one size. Otherwise, you end up with all the fluff of the day caught in the Velcro unless it's fully covered over.
You, my friend, are forgetting for this price you get a custom strap.
Is it custom?
I hope.
Yeah, I hope.
You hear me, MB&F? For this price, everyone gets a custom size strap.
Max himself flies out from Castle Grayskull, where they're now existing, and hand measures your wrist and fits you with a Velcro strap. I think that's a service that Max should be personally providing if you're going to buy a £78,000 MB&F HM8. Well, we kind of flagged it at the beginning that we were going to take a dip into the archive. And I feel a bit guilty about doing this, but I did a random number generator for the page of the aBlogtoWatch. There are 983 pages on the aBlogtoWatch website, and the random number generator kicked up number 393. And on page 393, the article, which I thought, well, you know, let's go back and talk about something that this podcast never had the chance to talk about. Seen as Ariel saying that, you know, everything has to be able to be listened to forever and relevant for more than just the week in which it's published. This is the Tudor Black Bay GMT, which to my mind is a watch that for me changed watches. I think this is the first hype watch that went beyond the watch geek, that actually started to get folk that were marginally into watches proper, and listening to podcasts and diving and going into history and all the rest of it. What do you guys remember about the launch of the Black Bay GMT?
I think a good thing to do when we do this is to also put the year and maybe even the month of publication, just to give a little bit of context.
So this is from March the 21st, 2018. Michael Pignatti wrote this article.
Okay, so this was, if I recall correctly, the same year that Rolex also had some new GMT, and it was very specifically seen that Tudor was doing this the same year that, you know, Rolex was. I think they were redoing the GMT, sort of like, wow, I'm really excited about that $10,000 watch. Guess I'm going to buy the $3,500 one. and that business model actually works quite well for Rolex and Tudor.
Yeah, was this launched at I suppose it would have been Baselworld back in the day, was it?
Yeah, this would have been at Baselworld. I think the very last Baselworld of 2018.
Yeah, David, were you at that Baselworld? Do you remember the hype around this watch?
Yeah, absolutely. It was Basel. I'm not sure if that was the last one though. I think 2019 was the last one. But whatever, I do remember that one. Yeah, and it's funny that it coincided that the two watches, that the Rolex and the Tudor, were launched in the same year. But they were, and you know, every once in a while people make this out to be the end of the world, but you know, every single time it turns out not to be the case.
And so what impact do you... as I said, I feel this watch had an impact beyond just the normal watch geek. Maybe it was just me. Maybe it's just because it was one of the first watches I was like, right, okay, I really need to get into watches more because I love this. Did you witness any change that this watch brought to the watch world? It was effectively, as you say, Ariel, a cheap Rolex that looked like an expensive Rolex that was actually made by Rolex.
At the time, we know that the Japanese companies were full at work making new mechanical GMT watches. Remember that, like, inexpensive mechanical GMTs really didn't exist. You had some just really crappy ones, but like you had to spend pretty big money if you wanted like a decent GMT. You could buy a really good chronograph for a lot less than a decent GMT. And what I mean is like an independently adjusting, 24-hour hand, maybe one that you could set forward and backwards. You know, some of the nicer ones allow you to set, just by the hour rather than... It's just these things, they may all look the same dial-wise, but they don't perform the same. And so what we have now is, we have the Seiko 5 GMT. Mm-hmm. So I think that what this did was the beginning of making it clear that there was a huge market for affordable, I don't know what you want to go, true or good performing or sophisticated mechanical automatic GMT movements.
Yeah, so this was what started the GMT trend that we're still we're maybe drawing towards the end of it, especially after you roasted the Omega Aquaterra a few weeks ago as not being a luxury movement. But yeah, maybe that is what this did. This actually brought the GMT movement back into the mainstream and made a whole lot of micro brands sit up and pay attention. That can we find a movement that we can put in an even more competitive watch than a Tudor Black Bay for a GMT? I mean, where did you go for GMT watches before at this kind of level, the sort of $3,000 level before Tudor came out with it? What was the go-to?
I mean, there's a lot of stuff. There's the ETA 2893, which is again not as great to use as the Rolex's GMT movement, but not bad. That would be very, very popular to do. And I'd say Omega with a lot of their Aquaterra ones, again, on a pre-owned or used basis were pretty affordable. But I probably those base ETA movements is really where you saw most of the entry price points at a Swiss-made mechanical product.
Cool. Well, go and hunt out that old article, and if you have a page number you'd like us to inspect and pick something from the aBlogtoWatch archive, then do get in touch. Anything you want to tell us other than that, email us podcasts@ablogtowatch.com. Or contact us, hit us up directly at any of our Instagram accounts. Finally, a bit of fun, although I'm not really au fait with the show, but a bit of pop culture collaboration, the Cartman watch from Unimatic. We're talking about this because it's one of the most commented articles on the website this week. I don't know if it's just because everybody is South Park fans. But tell us about your experience with the South Park watch. Ariel, you wrote the article. Are you a South Park fan, or did this just come across your desk?
No, I am. And I think what amused me is that, David and I have spent so much time, sharing mutual love for this show that it kind of surprised me that not everyone's into it. Like, I was actually kind of shocked that not everyone is a South Park fan. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying everyone needs to like the show, but it is intelligent, and there's sort of it's artistic, and it's in the way it's crude, and there's sort of an underlying intellectual philosophy behind a lot of it. It's not all perfect, but it is a high level, thinking production. It's not like cartoon. And so the sort of visceral reaction some people...
You keep telling yourself that, Ariel. You keep telling yourself that it's really sophisticated.
Look, I guess there's other opinions on the matter, and they've had a whole breadth of stuff. But artistically speaking, I put it very high up there with creativity. I love how dynamic the show is, how quickly they get shows out. There's just a lot of things to be impressed about there. And it's fun because, we're in an environment where all this stuff is getting on watches. All these cartoon characters, video games, movies... everything. Wasn't surprising that for the 25th anniversary of South Park there'd be a Cartman watch. I wore it a lot. I put it on this Seiko rowing blazer strap, which has these colors on it.
I'm sure rowing
people
blazers
like
are
it.
Delighted about.
What? No, they seem to have no problem with it. Actually, I told Jack about that, and he thought it was cool. I sent him a picture of it actually. And again, I just, again, not everyone's going to like it, but it sort of shows you that even within the world of watches, we all really exist in these microcosms, and something that is just so obviously cool to, David and myself, I can understand how another person might not have the same experience with me, but for me, I grew up with it. Super not controversial to be in the South Park on my end.
So I know about killing Kevin, and that's about it. So we've decided that there are those that take...
Kenny.
It's Kenny.
Oh, Kenny.
Oh my goodness.
Turns out I don't even know about that. But I say... So there are those that take their shoes off at the door and don't wear wristwatches inside.
Kenny's immortal.
And like South Park, and then there's everybody else. Good stuff. Tell us your favorite episode, David, of South Park. Favorite South Park meme. I know nothing about South Park. Educate me.
I absolutely love the Jennifer Lopez Mania episode, especially in Hungarian. It's hysterical. Because we rarely talk about tacos and burritos, and the way Cartman is singing in Hungarian with a Spanish accent, it's impersonating Jennifer Lopez is just absolutely hysterical. I actually watched that like twice the last week because I was like, I rediscovered my passion for South Park very recently, actually. And I was like, this is just too good. It's hysterical. And actually, the fact that it annoyed Jennifer Lopez to such an extent it just adds another bit of that she took it so seriously. It's just fantastic.
Okay, I might have to try and check that out because that does sound actually quite
Let me just say that taco flavored kisses sounds pretty funny in Hungarian.
And in English, it's also funny. That's just great.
Funny in English too, yeah.
Good stuff. Well, go and check out Ariel's review of the Unimatic South Park Modelo Uno U1 EC Cartman watch. So Cartman's not, is it Kenny or Kevin? What did I say? Cartman's not Kenny. Kevin, whatever his name is, different character. I know nothing about South Park, as was
Kenny.
clearly
Great.
Kenny. So Cartman's different from Kenny. It's not the same person. It's not.
No,
definitely not.
Definitely not. Right.
No.
Okay, that's fine.
There's an episode where Cartman dies, but he sort of doesn't. And there are lots of episodes where Kenny dies.
Well, it just sounds like the Marvel universe in cartoon form. No one actually ever dies.
Basically, yes. Ariel, is there another dial version with like Kenny on it, or is it just Cartman?
Well, that's the thing. I asked Unimatic. I was like, are there going to be more? Now that they have the relationship with, the license holder, that they can do whatever they want, they're going to go ahead and, see how this goes. This first series sold out. So as far as I know, there could be more. I don't know exactly what it'll be. This was simple. They just, put the character on the dial, no special hands or anything like that. So we'll see what happens. They did that. They did the SpongeBob one in 2 sets. So there was a second edition of the SpongeBob one, which was also Unimatic. So I think there's a good chance there'll be more of these watches.
I'm just realizing I'm now reading some of the comment section. Go check out the comment section because Ariel's having a square go with several of the readers over this watch. So go check out the comment section and let us know what you think about this watch. The comment section.
Thank you, Ariel, for fighting the good fight.
Fighting the good fight.
Anytime, David.
Where are you guys this week, David? What are you up to? You wearing you lining up your watches at your bedside table and not wearing them and putting them by the door by all your shoes. Do you match your watches with your shoes on the way out? I don't know.
I'm moving all my watches to my shoe rack. That's what I'm doing this week.
Put a watch in each shoe and it'll surprise you as to which one you're wearing every morning.
Yes, exactly. I would just match them together. Yeah.
What are you reviewing currently? What's coming from you on the website?
Well, I'm in the process of editing. I actually took a video and the time lapse of me putting together this Initium thing, and of course there's an article. So I had my camera on a tripod. I had to stand up, take a picture, then sit down, watch the instruction videos, do the thing that I had to do, then make sure that the time lapse is rolling, and then narrate the whole thing to the camera because I was hoping to like have a video out of this. So I have to like put all of this into like something that resembles quality content.
Now, bear in mind the listener / the viewer of the video will be checking to see that you're not wearing a watch and that you've not got any shoes on. So I don't know if there's a wide angle shot of you doing this that shows.
I am wearing a watch throughout this process, actually. So,
so it turns out you were fibbing. Anyway, yeah. Ariel, what's coming from you this week?
I'm wearing an interesting watch that I've actually really enjoyed. This is the Zenith Defy Skyline in black ceramic with the matching black ceramic bracelet. And this is the first time I've worn a sharper cut, sort of smaller segment ceramic bracelet because of sort of the style. I've had, of course, experience with Chanel J12s, but those are a very different type of link. This is a cool watch. I have a lot of thoughts on it, but it's sort of, I'm still asking myself the question of how I like an all ceramic watch on bracelet compared to a metal one, because I think it's a very interesting and different experience for people. It's quite cool and compelling, I have to say.
And are you finding yourself protecting it because you're worried about it?
Yeah, I do. I do. And again, I never felt this way with a Chanel at all. But again, the links are substantially larger. I do think to myself, wow, I don't want to do something accidental. It doesn't feel fragile, but like, yeah, there's something about it which just makes me a little afraid. I'm sure if I wore it for a long time and didn't have a problem with it, that would wane. But there is this sort of sense of fragility to it, even though it's extremely scratch resistant.
Good stuff. Well, look forward to that coming out shortly. Thank you everybody for listening. Please leave us a review on your podcast of choice. Let your friends know, and if you really must, go and listen to Superlative, that evergreen show that will just remain relevant forever and ever while we fade into weekly obscurity.
Within about 2 months, we will have 12,000 published articles on aBlogtoWatch. So that's a lot of archives to dig into.
There is a lot of archives to dig into. So if you'd like us to visit the archives, then do give us a shout. Thank you all very much for listening. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.